Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to speak a bit. As we a bit discussed before, I would be very interested if you could tell us some insights of yours in your professional expertise and path about this integration of innovation in educational toolkits, but with a cultural component. So how do you see an educational approach taking into consideration cultural instruments, for example, but also the cultural space where you are, where we discussed about.
Could you give me an example of what you mean by culture in this instance?
So for example, when you have a math lesson, for example, you don't dive in like in a very abstract way. You said the Egyptians, when they constructed this, they do that. So, or when you do,
it's like storytelling.
Yes, like a storytelling and diving, using, for example, history for teaching math, or using music for teaching art, and so on. So how do you see this normality? So, for example, you can have a lesson in a museum, or you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that
that's a really good question, actually. I think that, and it speaks to the problem, I think, with education. I mean, it's like, we haven't really changed it for more than 100 years.
Yes.
We had this idea of silos. I mean, so you say, like, okay, we're going to teach maths, and we're going to teach physics, and we're going to teach art, and it's like they're all separate, and it's like these lines between different teachers with different things. And I mean, real life isn't like that.
Yes.
I mean, of course, I understand that we are trying to have foundational skills in each of those subjects. But if it's detached from meaning, our passions, our interests, then it's easy to forget. I mean, it's like, I could, for example, I'm speaking at the conference, there's like nearly 3,000 teachers. I guarantee that if I asked for one of them to come up and do quadratic equations with me, I won't get many volunteers. and part of this, of course, is that we all did quadratic equations when we did maths at high school.
At one point in time.
And of course, we learnt it long enough to pass a test, and then we forgot about it. We didn't apply it to anything particularly interesting. So I think, in terms of whether it's a cultural reference or whether it's just actually, for example, in like project-based learning, when we're making something, when we're creating something we're passionate about. There's very few things that we're making in the sort of physical world that doesn't encompass nearly every one of the subjects that we have in high school. And I think that's a way of not just imparting knowledge, but a way of it sticking in a way that the individual finds passion. They're passionate about something. So, I knew I needed to use a quadratic equation because I was doing this particular kind of thing, for example.
Yes.
So I think it's the combination of things.
But what strikes me is that when we talk about innovation, we think both that what you mentioned, to use culture in education, but we also think, for example, of artificial intelligence or technology, or bringing digital means to education. I mean, it's a split, actually. AI is innovation now, putting culture into education. It is not anymore, but still is, because as you mentioned, there are very old techniques, educational techniques. So if some teachers or some systems are not prepared for this kind of innovation, which is not innovation, well, it is, but it's not so breaking through, because it was. How would they deal with this new innovation, if I may say like that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the thing is like, we have to remember teachers are people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And most of us as people are, for example, we're using our smartphones, which are mobile computers. We're actually doing quite a lot of sophisticated things with this technology anyway. And so, if we look at the idea of teaching, if we're stuck to this model that teaching is a broadcast model, where the teacher is at the front and is in control of the learning, then it's going to be problematic, isn't it? But that's such a ridiculous idea when you think about it. And this goes back to, this isn't a new idea. So to park the technology for a moment, let's think about what the nature of a learning and education and teaching is. Really, it's co-learning.
Yeah.
And if you look at the works of people like Paulo Freire, who wrote The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he was talking about that the teaching and learning is like a relationship between two people. And it changes every time. And so it's co-learning. What is the matter if the teacher doesn't understand the AI technology or isn't as proficient in the AI technology that a child is? I don't think that actually matters.
Okay, very nice approach.
What we're thinking about is what are we trying to do? What is the destination? And I think that then speaks to the conversation that really we have to have urgently, which is what is the point of school? What's school for? What is the purpose of education? Where are we going to? Because if we're in a situation where we think that the nature of school, the nature of teaching, is about getting students from this position to pass this particular test with this kind of content, then of course these technological interventions will either be co-opted into that, or they'll be abandoned. I mean, we've heard a lot about...
More about abandonment, because...
well, we're seeing the banning of smartphones and banning, mobile computers. Let's call them what they are these days. Let's forget the phone, they're mobile computers.
It's a misunderstanding anyway,
right. And so this is a powerful tool for independent inquiry. And learning and developing and all those kinds of things, right? The problem with these things, of course, is that they've been polluted and infiltrated with the kind of apps like social media, for example.
I think it was inevitable.
But inevitable, yes. But maybe that's the area of regulation.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? That's the area of regulation. Health warnings on these things. I mean, and of course, it's a bit like the sort of tobacco lobby, which tens of years it took to the point where we could say,
we don't have a commercial at the
but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of thing with social media, because what you end up having is very, very powerful corporations lobbying governments and something else. And we know, we know that there are so many issues, including the erosion of democracy in the adult world, let alone the sort of addictive behaviours that we're seeing.
It is addiction.
Well, and it's designed to be like that because of the kind of people employed. I mean, you've got neuroscientists. More neuroscientists are working in these corporations than working in mental health. Exactly. And it was the same with advertising in the 1950s as well. I mean, it was like a lot of psychoanalysts were ending up working in advertising and marketing and all that kind of stuff. And it creates, that in itself had an impact on mental health and so on. So this isn't new. So back to the original question is integrating different technologies and different tools. So that's what they are, tools. It's really about what you're trying to do with education. Now, the reason why technology hasn't had really much impact on education, or the impact that technology has had, is when it's been reinforcing 19th century practice. Do you know what I mean? So if we say that teaching is instruction, then we're going to use the computer to do the instruction better than a teacher. I mean, that's the idea, right? But teaching shouldn't be just about instruction.
Of course.
And the reason why it's become like that is because we somehow think that the destination in the school is to get these kids on the conveyor belt, to get their examinations, to get good grades, and then go to a good university or into work. Now, I think we have to kind of think about that a bit more now. We have to think about what is the actual goal of education, what is the point? Because, if we look at what's happened over the last 5 years, or since my book was published, actually, it's like we've had a global pandemic. We've had major climatic events. We've had the erosion of truth. And yet we still haven't transformed. We're not transforming our education system. We're not thinking about the purpose. And also we've got to think about what challenges are ahead in the future. We know there's some pretty big challenges for us as a species. I mean, it's obviously about climate, for example. That's an issue, and sustainability and so on.
Everything is an emergency anyway.
We can always
on
say
a scale or another, of course.
We could say that throughout human history there have been these things, but we are facing existential threats at the moment. And whether it's just purely climate or the rise of particularly extreme political ideology. I mean, we had riots in London recently.
I've been following.
Our fellow human beings. I mean, this is insane. You know what I mean? I mean, we thought we so we need to be thinking about why we send our children to school, and if it's got to be more than daycare.
Hopefully, but I will end with this open question that you addressed. What is the purpose of education? What is the aim? I mean, why do kids go to school or receive the education? Why? Because of the future profession, yes, or not? or maybe they want to be knowledgeable or have a happy life, just like that. Not only to have a good job or good paid job. So actually.
So that's interesting what you said there.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, it was like, well, maybe the purpose of work is to get a good job.
Yeah.
But then you said, or to have a happy life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, those two aren't. They're not. Do you know what I mean? They're either not mutually exclusive,
Yeah.
but they don't rely on each other. Of course. I mean, and it's like the question then, of course, is because I think what you're talking about is fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that may come from work or whatever. So that begs the kind of question about what are the jobs of the future?
Yes, that was the point.
And it's like, you know what? It's never been easier.
Yeah, it is.
It's never been easier to know what the jobs of the future are.
Which?
The ones that machines can't do.
Yeah.
So that,
which requires soft skills, what are?
Look, over 100 years of industrialization,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, since the last, we had, the original management consultants like Frederick Taylor, Keteley, all these people that would measure everything to transform craft production into mass production.
Yes.
To create human robots.
Yeah.
So they would go through the schooling system to train you in a way so that you could go into the workforce.
And be integrated.
Be integrated in the workforce, which required you to do repetitive tasks, 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then, not ask too many questions, really. Do you know what I mean? And whether it was an office or a factory or a hospital, I mean, all these institutions are very much the same. Ivan Illich wrote about this in the 70s. But the reality of it now, of course, is that, having had an education system to robotize the humans, we're now being able to replace those kinds of work with actual robots. Fantastic.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. We can automate the work and humanize the jobs. And there are lots of jobs.
Humanize the job, I like this. Yeah.
Humanize the jobs. I mean, it's like human interaction. We're great at that. Do you know what I mean? Because we are humans.
Yes.
Relational, looking after our children, looking after our elderly.
Very nice.
Landscaping, gardens, refurbishing homes. I mean, we need lots and lots of teachers. We need lots and lots of people working in social care. We need counselling. It's like this could be the opportunity actually to liberate us.
Yes.
Now the problem with that, of course, the challenge with that is that we look at this revolution with the lens of the 1950s.
Yes.
We look at this sort of industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, through the lens of productivity and economic growth and 5-day weeks. And
we can't stop it.
No, because it's locked in. It's an economic model.
Yeah.
So we have an economic model which we're slaves to, which is based around scarce resources and all this kind of stuff. And so we end up, the game is to accumulate resources. So that's money or whatever. And that's what we're on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's fine. It's a bit like the sort of defensive processes we've had when we've had trauma. We have built up all these kind of defensive processes which to enable us to survive as human beings. But then the problem is we continue those processes into when we're not at war anymore. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like that with this system. It's like, this is we have the opportunity for people to have self-realization, which is what you were talking about in your question, which was a kind of, is it to get a good job or is it to have a happy life? But I think it's how we determine the jobs. Do you know what I mean? I think we have that opportunity, but it's going to take bold and imaginative thinking from ourselves, from our society, and from the people that we elect into government. Do you know what I mean? And how we design our economies, because that has to change.